Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
She was standing at the kitchen sink when it hit her. The dishes were done. The counters were wiped. The throw pillows were exactly where they belong. And she just stood there, staring at the faucet, waiting for something to feel like enough. Maybe you know that moment. That strange, hollow stillness that arrives not when things fall apart, but when everything looks perfectly fine. Because here's what nobody tells you about perfectionism. It doesn't feel like ambition when you're living inside it. It doesn't feel like discipline or drive or any of the words we use to make it sound admirable. It feels like exhaustion wearing a very convincing disguise. It feels like a second job you never applied for, never get paid for, and can never, ever quit. And the cruelest part, the people closest to you think you have it together. They come to you, they lean on you. They look at your life, the organized closet, the birthday cards sent on time, the sofa that actually rose. And they sigh in that way that says, God, she makes it look easy. And you smile. Because what else do? You smile and you carry it, and you carry it, and you carry it. I want to sit with you for a moment in the part of this story we don't often say out loud. Not the part where we praise women for being capable. We've heard that speech. We've given that speech. The part underneath. The quiet whisper that's been running beneath the surface of your days for how long now? 20 years? 30? Since you were a little girl and someone looked at your work and found it almost right? That whisper. You know the one. Not quite good enough. Try again. What will they think? Don't let them see you struggle. For so many women, especially women who grew up in a time when strength meant silence and grace meant never letting them see you sweat. Perfectionism didn't arrive as a character flaw. It arrived as a survival strategy. And for a while, it worked. It worked beautifully. You learned early that if you kept everything just so, fewer bad things happened. If you didn't cause problems, maybe you weren't a problem. If you excelled, maybe you were safe. Maybe you were loved. Maybe you were finally enough. And so you built it, piece by piece, year by year. A life carefully constructed to leave no room for criticism, for failure, for the kind of mess that might make someone look at you and look away. We called it high standards. We called it responsibility. We wrapped it in the language of virtue, and then wondered why it felt so much like a prison. Here's something I've been thinking about. Armor protects you, but armor also keeps you from being touched. The same walls we built to protect ourselves from judgment, they're the walls that stand between us and genuine connection. Between us and rest. Between us and the version of ourselves that exists beneath all the doing and managing and holding it all together. And at 55, at 60, at 68, something shifts. It has to. The body starts to push back, the knees, the sleep. The way a hard week now takes a full weekend to recover from. Life begins to insist, gently at first and then with a firmness you can no longer negotiate with, that you slow down. And when you slow down, when the business that once kept the armor polished starts to fall away, what's left? That's the question that frightens so many women I've spoken with and read about and, honestly, recognized in my own mirror. When the children are grown and the career has peaked and the house no longer needs you in the same frantic way, who are you if you're not performing perfection? Who are you when no one's grading you? This is the emotional ground we need to stand on before we go anywhere else together. Because the healing, the real healing, not the bumper, sticker kind, it doesn't start with a list of tips. It starts here, in the recognition, in the naming. You have been wearing armor for a very long time, and you are tired. And that tiredness, that is not weakness. That is not failure. That is the most honest thing you've felt in years. And it is the first true doorway to something lighter. Stay with me. We're just getting started. Nobody wakes up one morning and decides to become a perfectionist. It doesn't happen like that. There's no moment of choice, no conscious agreement you sign. It happens the way most deep things happen. Slowly, quietly, in the spaces between ordinary moments. In a look someone gave you. In a comment that landed harder than they probably intended. In the lesson you drew from a room that went silent at exactly the wrong time. Let me take you back. Not to some dramatic, cinematic wound, though some of you carry those too, and they are real and they matter. But I want to talk about the smaller moments. The ones we've almost forgotten. The ones that shaped us so gradually we never noticed they were shaping us at all. Maybe you were 7 or 8 years old, and you brought something home. A drawing, a report card, a handmade gift. And the response you got wasn't wrong, exactly. No one was cruel. But there was a pause. A slight tilt of the head. This is good, but next time... And something in your young, brilliant, tender little mind filed that away. Next time, do better. Next time, be more. Or maybe you were the oldest daughter. And oldest daughters in America, particularly women who came of age in the 60s and 70s, absorbed a very specific and very silent curriculum. You learned by watching. You watched your mother hold the family together with both hands and still apologize for not doing more. You watched competence go unacknowledged and complaints go unvoiced. You learned that love and labor were the same word. That worthiness had to be earned every single day through performance. And you were a good student. There's a particular kind of wound that doesn't look like a wound at all. It looks like a compliment. It sounds like praise. She's so responsible. She's so capable. She never falls apart. And every time someone said that about you, every time the room turned to you in a crisis, every time you were the one who handled it, a part of you felt seen, felt valuable, felt necessary. A necessity that felt close enough to love. So you kept going. You kept being the one who handled it. You volunteered for the weight because carrying it was the only way you knew how to matter. And the armor got heavier, but it also got more familiar. More you. Until one day you couldn't remember what you felt like without it. This is the unspoken truth about perfectionism in women of our generation. It wasn't vanity. It wasn't ego. It was a deeply intelligent response to a world that gave you very little room to be imperfect and still be loved. You adapted brilliantly. You survived. And now that survival strategy is still running, long after the original danger has passed. Like an alarm system that never got the message that the threat is gone. Can I ask you something? And I want you to really sit with it. When was the last time you let someone see you struggle? Truly struggle, without immediately pivoting to, but I'm fine, I've got it. Don't worry about me. When was the last time you said I don't know without following it up with a plan? Or I'm tired without a justification? Or I made a mistake without an explanation, an apology, and a 5-point strategy for how it won't happen again? For most of us, that kind of nakedness feels not just uncomfortable, it feels dangerous. Because somewhere along the way, we learned that being seen in our incompleteness meant being left, being judged, being less than. And so we perfected the art of managed visibility. We let people see the polished version, the capable version, the version that has it together. We share our victories and edit our struggles. We show up to the dinner party glowing and come home and cry in the bathroom because nobody knows. Nobody ever knows how much it costs to keep the performance going. I think about the weight we carry, not metaphorically. I think about it physically. The tension in the shoulders that never quite releases. The jaw that clenches at night. The sleep that should be restful but somehow leaves you tired. The body keeps score, as they say. And after decades of bracing, decades of holding yourself to a standard that has no finish line, the body starts to send very clear messages. Maybe yours already has. Maybe a doctor has used words like chronic stress or inflammation or suggested, gently, that you might want to slow down, and you nodded politely and drove home and made 3 phone calls, answered 7 emails, and started a load of laundry. Because slowing down isn't just a logistical challenge. For a woman whose identity is woven into her capability, slowing down feels like disappearing. If I stop doing, who am I? If I stop managing, will anyone notice me at all? If I put down the armor, what's left underneath? These aren't small questions. They are, in fact, some of the most profound questions a human being can ask. And the reason so many women in their 50s, 60s, and 70s find themselves at a crossroads, anxious in ways they can't quite name, restless in the middle of lives that should feel full, is because these questions are finally demanding to be answered. The armor worked. For a long time, it worked beautifully. But beauty and freedom are not the same thing. Here's what I want you to hold before we move forward. The perfectionism you developed was not a character flaw. It was not vanity or rigidity or some inherited neurosis you need to be ashamed of. It was creativity. It was intelligence. It was a young woman reading her environment and responding with everything she had. You built the armor because you needed it. You needed it to be taken seriously in rooms that weren't designed for you. You needed it to protect a heart that had been dismissed or overlooked or quietly underestimated. You needed it to carve out dignity in a world that often asked you to earn yours daily. So before we talk about putting it down, because we will talk about that, and it is possible, and it is the most liberating thing you will ever do, I need you to offer yourself something first. Not pity, not analysis, compassion. The kind of compassion you would offer without hesitation to a daughter, to a friend, to any woman who sat across from you and said, I have been trying so hard for so long, and I'm not sure anyone really sees how tired I am. You would reach across and take her hand, wouldn't you? It's time to take your own. There's a moment, and if it hasn't happened to you yet, it will, where something very small breaks something very large. It's never the catastrophe that does it. It's never the big, dramatic event you'd expect to finally bring you to your knees. It's the Tuesday afternoon when nothing is particularly wrong, and you sit down on the edge of the bed to change your shoes, and you just don't get up. You sit there, 5 minutes, 10, staring at the carpet, and somewhere in that stillness, a thought surfaces that you've been outrunning for years. I can't keep doing this, not won't, can't. And the difference between those two words, that's where everything begins to change. The unraveling doesn't always look like falling apart. I want to be very clear about that, because so many women I've known, brilliant, strong, deeply self-aware women, have missed their own unraveling because it didn't match the image they had in their heads. They were waiting for a breakdown, a dramatic collapse, tears in a public place or a week in bed or some undeniable, visible crisis that would finally give them permission to stop. But it rarely comes that way. For most of us, the unraveling is quieter, more ambiguous. It looks like irritability you can't quite explain, snapping at someone you love over something small, and then feeling a shame so disproportionate to the offense that it frightens you. It looks like standing in a grocery store aisle and suddenly feeling utterly, inexplicably overwhelmed by the choice between two kinds of pasta sauce. It looks like crying during a commercial, during a song, during a perfectly ordinary moment that has no right to make you feel this much. It looks like being tired of being strong. And somewhere in the back of your mind, beneath the efficiency and the scheduling and the careful management of every moving part of your life, a quiet whisper gets louder. Something has to change. Now here's the part where a lesser conversation would hand you a list. 5 steps to letting go of perfectionism. Cheerful, Teddy, immediately actionable. And you'd read it, and you'd nod, and you might even screenshot it. And then you'd add work on perfectionism to your to-do list and execute it with the same relentless efficiency you bring to everything else. Because that's what we do. We're good at doing. But this isn't a to-do list kind of moment. This is a being kind of moment. And for women who have spent decades mastering the art of doing, being is often the most radical and terrifying thing imaginable. Because being means sitting in the discomfort without fixing it. It means letting a feeling move through you without immediately redirecting it into productivity. It means tolerating just for a moment the sensation of not having an answer and not dying from it. That is the real work, and it is hard. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Let me tell you about the crack in the armor. Because the armor doesn't shatter all at once. It develops a crack. One small fracture, usually in a place you didn't expect. And through that crack comes something you haven't felt in a very long time. Maybe something you've never let yourself feel fully. Grief. I know that word might surprise you, but here's what I've come to understand: beneath almost every perfectionist exterior is an enormous, unprocessed grief. A grief for the self that never got to just be. For the little girl who learned to perform before she learned to rest. For the decades of Sunday evenings spent dreading Monday instead of savoring the quiet. For every moment you were present in body, but somewhere else entirely in spirit. Mentally rehearsing, managing, anticipating, bracing. There is grief for the relationships that stayed surface level because you couldn't risk being truly known. For the creative dreams you set aside because they weren't practical enough, certain enough, perfect enough to pursue. For the version of yourself that you keep promising you'll become someday, when everything settles, when the kids are launched, when the house is paid off, when you finally deserve a little peace. That someday has been following you for a long time. And the crack in the armor is the first honest acknowledgement that someday is not a destination. It's a decision. And it can be made right now, in this imperfect, unfinished, beautifully ordinary moment. Something shifts in a woman when she stops fighting the unraveling. I've seen it. I've lived a version of it. There's a particular quality to the air in a room when a woman finally exhales, really exhales, and says, out loud or just to herself, I don't have to be perfect to be worthy. It's like watching someone take off a backpack they forgot they were wearing. The physical relief is real. The shoulders drop. The jaw unclenches. The eyes go soft in a way they haven't in years. And then, almost immediately, the fear. Because the armor, for all its weight, was also a sanctuary of sorts. Isn't that something? The very thing that was imprisoning you also felt like home. It kept out the drafts. It kept out the judgment. It gave you a role, a purpose, an identity you could point to and say, this is who I am. And when it starts to come apart, even voluntarily, even gently, there is a terrifying moment of exposure. If I'm not the woman who has it together, who am I? This is the question that sits at the very center of the unraveling. And it cannot be answered quickly. It cannot be answered perfectly. It can only be answered slowly, tenderly, through the kind of patient self-inquiry that our culture doesn't honor nearly enough, especially in women of a certain age, who are so often made to feel that their most important years of self-discovery are behind them. They are not. Not even close. I want to say something directly to you now. Not as a psychologist, not as a storyteller, just as one woman who understands the particular exhaustion of holding yourself to a standard that was never quite human. The cracking is not the ending. It feels like it. Lord, it feels like it. When the composure slips, when the carefully tended image starts to show its seams, when you find yourself saying things like, I don't know and I need help and I'm not okay, it can feel like collapse, like failure, like the very thing you spent your whole life trying to prevent has finally arrived at your door. But it hasn't. What has arrived, what has finally, blessedly arrived, is you, the real you, the one who is always there beneath the performance, the one who is tired and tender and funny and uncertain and still so full of life it aches, the one who doesn't need to earn her place at the table because she was never required to earn it in the first place, even if nobody told her that early enough. The unraveling is not the end of your story. It is, in the most sacred and gutting way possible, the beginning of the truest chapter you've ever written. And here's what waits on the other side of it. Not perfection, we're done chasing that. But something far more nourishing. Something that actually satisfies. A way of moving through the world that doesn't require you to brace against it. A relationship with yourself that is rooted not in what you produce, but in who you are. Mornings that feel like openings instead of obligations. Connections that go deep because you've finally allowed someone to see past the armor and find you, just you, standing there. Whole, imperfect. Enough. The question is no longer, can you put down the armor? The question is whether you're ready. Nobody tells you that freedom feels unfamiliar at first. That's the thing they leave out. All the books, all the wisdom, all the well-meaning advice about letting go and embracing imperfection. They make it sound like a revelation. Like one good cry and a walk in the woods, and suddenly you're standing in a meadow with soft light on your face and a heart full of peace. And maybe for a moment it is like that. But then you go home, and the dishes are in the sink, and someone needs something from you. And the old voice, that familiar, relentless, lifelong voice, starts up again almost immediately. You're behind. You're slipping. What will they think? This isn't good enough. And here's where so many women give up on the whole project. They mistake the return of the voice for proof that nothing has changed, that they're too far gone. That freedom is for other women, younger women, lighter women, women who didn't spend 5 decades building walls this thick. But here's the truth. The voice coming back doesn't mean you failed. It means you're human. And being human, fully messily, unapologetically human, is exactly where we're trying to go. Coming home to yourself is not a single moment. It's a practice. And I use that word deliberately, the way we use it for yoga or prayer or any discipline that asks something of us daily, quietly, without the promise of a finish line. You don't arrive at self-compassion and unpack your bags and stay there forever. You visit. You get nudged out. You find your way back. You visit again. And each time you return, it's a little less foreign. The door is a little easier to open. So what does it actually look like? Not in theory, but on a regular Wednesday morning, in a real woman's real life. It looks like catching yourself mid-apology for something that required no apology and stopping. Just stopping. Letting the sentence end without the self-erasure attached to it. It looks like a grandchild's finger, painting on your refrigerator that is objectively chaotic and absolutely perfect, and makes you feel something loosen in your chest every time you look at it. It looks like telling a friend, a real friend, someone who has earned it, I'm struggling right now. And then sitting with the silence that follows, and discovering that the silence is not judgment. It is presence. It is someone leaning in. It looks like a meal that didn't turn out right, eaten with laughter instead of apology. It looks like a project left unfinished at 9 in the evening because your body said enough, and you, for the first time in longer than you can remember, listened. Small things, ordinary things, but every single one of them a quiet act of revolution. I want to talk about the relationships, because this is where the real gift lies, and it's also where the deepest fear tends to gather. For so long, perfectionism kept you at a careful, managed distance from the people you love most. Not because you didn't love them deeply. You do, fiercely. But because genuine intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires the willingness to be seen without your armor on. To be known not just in your capability, but in your confusion. Not just in your strength, but in your sorrow. Not just in the moments you have it together, but in the quiet Tuesday evenings when you're sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the carpet, wondering if any of it is enough. And here is the sacred, surprising truth that waits on the other side of that kind of openness. People don't love you less when they see you struggle. They love you more. Not because struggle is attractive or suffering is noble, but because recognition is the deepest human hunger. When you let someone see you as you actually are, you give them something extraordinary. you give them permission to be human too. You become safe to them in a way that your perfect, composed, managed self never quite could. You become real. And real is what we are all desperately searching for in a world that has become very good at polished surfaces and very poor at actual depth. Your daughter who watches you. Your sister who has always felt slightly inadequate next to your composure. Your friend who keeps her own struggles carefully hidden because she's never seen you have any. What happens when you let them in? What happens when you say, simply and honestly, this is hard for me too? Something opens. Something ancient and necessary and deeply human. The armor comes down, and in its place, connection. Real nourishing soul-level connection of the kind that actually satisfies. That is what was waiting behind the walls all along. There is something I need to say about this season of your life. This specific, particular, unrepeatable season. The culture we live in has a complicated relationship with women over 50. It tends to treat this chapter as a kind of epilogue, a winding down, a stepping back, a graceful fade toward irrelevance. And if you've absorbed any of that message, even unconsciously, I want you to hear this with everything I have. This is not your epilogue. This is, if you choose it, your most honest chapter yet. Because for the first time in perhaps your entire adult life, you have something you didn't have at 30 or 40 or even 45. You have perspective. You have survived things. You have outlasted people's opinions of you. You have watched what you thought mattered turn out not to matter very much, and you have stumbled upon what actually does. You have earned a particular kind of wisdom that only arrives through living.